welcome back to another video of TV Talk here on the Vochek Experience, where idiots are still always us. Always me. I'm always the idiot, and that's a good thing. Anyway, it's been quite some time since I've done a TV Talk video, and I thought that I would do this video in tribute and remembrance to the late great actor Dean Stockwell, known most notably for his starring role on the late 80s, early 90s show Quantum Leap. He passed away a few days ago on November 7th, 2021. And I'm a huge fan of Quantum Leap, and I'm a huge fan of Dean Stockwell. I've seen him in many, many things other than Quantum Leap, but people seem to know him most from Quantum Leap. So, and since I grew up watching Quantum Leap, I thought that I would count down my personal 10 favorite episodes that feature Dean Stockwell as the character of Al more prominently in the episode. But before we get to the countdown, I just want to kind of recap a little bit. If you have not heard of the show Quantum Leap, I'm going to do a quick little synopsis of what the whole show is about. Basically, this show is about a quantum physicist named Sam Beckett, played by Scott Bakula, who, through a time travel experiment that went a little caca, as Al puts it, ends up going back in time, and he ends up leaping into other people's lives. He leaps into other people's bodies, and he's there to put right what once went wrong. And when he's back there, when he's living this other person's life, people all around him see him as the person he replaced. But in the future where Sam comes from, everybody sees the person that he leapt into as him, if that makes sense. They kind of like trade places in time, I guess. And that person goes to the waiting room inside what they call Project Quantum Leap, and that's where they get information about, where Sam's leapt into, the information about their lives and everything, so that Sam can accomplish his mission. Not to mention, inside the project is a supercomputer named Ziggy that also gives information and helps along the way. And then we got Dean Stockwell, who plays the character of Al, who is to Sam is a hologram. He goes into what this room called the imaging chamber, and he's able to project himself back in time, and only Sam can see and hear him because they're tuned to each other's minds. So Sam sees Al as a hologram, and to Al in the imaging chamber, Sam and everything around him is a hologram to him, if that makes sense. The show ran for 5 seasons. I was kind of bummed out when the show ended, because the show ended on a cliffhanger. And because when they filmed the 5th season finale, they did not know they were going to get canceled. And so they filmed it as, kind of a cliffhanger to go into the next season. But then it ended up getting canceled somehow in the whole mess of things. And we never got a resolution to that kind of cliffhanger that happened at the end of the series. Now, I'm not going to go into depth of, that part of the series. I'm not going to get in depth into the series finale, but what I am going to do is count down my top 10 episodes that I really enjoy and that involve Dean Stockwell as Al on a, more prominent way in the episode. It's always going to be about Sam and Al, but you got to have episodes in there that focus, more on the one character than the other, or, where they have really good character moments in the episode that kind of, touch you and in certain ways and everything. And Dean Stockwell's character of Al is my favorite character of the show. He always brings a certain humor to the character, and and the way he portrays the character of Al is I just love his performance. So, like I said, I'm going to count down my top 10 Quantum Leap episodes that deal more with the character of Al. So, with that being said, let's get into the countdown. So, here's number 10. An episode called The Color of Truth from season 1. Now, this episode involves Sam leaping back as a black man in the South, I believe in the 50s, and of course that's a time when there was still segregation and all that stuff, and Sam has to deal with life as a black man and getting treated in a very negative way because he is a black man in the South. But this episode has some really good Al moments, which is gearing more towards the end of the episode, where Sam, as the black guy, he ends up getting arrested because some guys ran the person he leapt into's niece off the road and has to take her to the hospital. And of course, the only hospital that's available is a white hospital. That's the closest hospital. And of course, they really don't want to take her because she's black. And the lady that Sam's person that he leapt into, like his boss lady, was a prominent figure in that town, and she basically says, yeah, you're gonna treat this girl at this hospital. But of course they're not having any of it, and they end up arresting him anyway. And of course his mission in this episode is to save Miss Melanie, which is Sam's boss, because he's like her chauffeur and stuff, and like her butler, that kind of thing. And in the original history of the episode, she gets killed by driving her car onto some railroad tracks because it's by train, and his job is to save her. But he can't really do that while he's in jail, so it's up to Al to try to do it. And of course, nobody can see and hear Al, but so it's got some great scenes where he's in the car with her trying to get her to stop. He's yelling at her and all this stuff, and of course she can't really hear him and everything. And it just really good moments while he's trying to get her to stop. And of course, right before she gets hit, he really starts yelling and yelling and yelling. And somehow she pulls off the side of the road and stops. And she thinks that she kind of heard the voice of her dead husband, which was really kind of funny, because she kind of looks over at Al and you didn't have to yell or something like that. It's just funny. All right, number 9 is the episode titled Dr. Ruth, and this comes from the show's 5th and final season. In this episode, Sam leaps into Dr. Ruth Westheimer. I don't know if you really know who Dr. Ruth is or not, but I'll just tell you, Dr. Ruth is a radio host that talks about sex and stuff on the radio and stuff, like sex education stuff. And of course, Sam, he's kind of uncomfortable with that kind of thing, but because he replaced Dr. Ruth in the past, Dr. Ruth is now in the future where Sam comes from. And of course, Al and Dr. Ruth start having sessions because Al, he's been married 5 times. He has a girlfriend, and he is afraid to commit fully to the girlfriend he has. And he's there with Dr. Ruth, and they go back and forth talking about some stuff. And you learn some things about Al, and especially, that his one true love was his first wife, Beth, who he ended up losing because he was in the Navy, and he ended up being a POW during Vietnam, and she thought that he was dead, so she moved on. And by the time that he got released and everything, he found out that she had already moved on and everything. And because of that, none of his other marriages ever worked out, all this other stuff. And through this going back and forth with Dr. Ruth and stuff. You learn a lot. It's got some really nice comedic moments too, especially with Al trying to say the word breasts. That is the most funniest thing I've ever seen in an episode of Quantum Leap. I'm not going to really go over exactly that part, of that episode, but if you want to, see that, you're just going to have to find Quantum Leap somewhere, whether on DVD or on the NBC streaming app, and watch the episode, but it's funny. Number 8 on this list is an episode titled A Leap for Lisa, and this is actually the 4th season's finale. And it deals with Sam, who ends up leaping into Al when Al was younger and when he was an ensign in the Navy, because now in the present, he's an admiral, but this is back when he was still an ensign years ago. And you got some really cool scenes with Al talking to young Al in the waiting room in the episode, and it's kind of funny how the young Al doesn't kind of recognize that it's himself he's talking to, but older. But there's a lot of good banter going on in that episode. And also in this episode, we find out that back then, Al was accused of raping and murdering an officer's wife, which of course he did not do. And Sam is there to basically clear Al's name and prevent it, because even though in the original history, Al never got accused or, went to trial or anything because of that, but Sam kind of did a faux pas early in the episode and caused, the whole thing that now he has to prove Al's innocence. So you get some wonderful moments of Dean Stockwell as Al, reminiscing about his times back in the old days, even visiting his old squadron and his old buddies from the Navy and everything. And of course, they can't really hear him. So, it's just fun seeing that whole sequence. Another good episode. I highly recommend it. All right, number 7 on this list is an episode titled The Boogie Man. This was Quantum Leap's attempt at a Halloween episode, and boy, they hit the mark with Halloween. This episode comes in the 3rd season, and a lot of people think that this episode is actually cursed. From what I understand, from what I've read in certain behind-the-scenes things, and some, behind-the-scenes documentaries I've seen of Quantum Leap, where they say that weird things happened while they were trying to film this episode, like cameras being all weird, some different things going on. But basically in this episode, Sam leaps back to a horror novelist, and through the course of the episode, you kind of meet a young Stephen King, which is pretty cool. But the main thing about this episode is that there's some mysterious deaths going on, and they're trying to figure out who done it, And it's a really weird episode. And as it turns out, at the end of the episode, you find out that it was actually Al that did the killing, but with a twist. Not really the real Al, but actually the devil disguised as Al. And of course, you get a moment of, evil Al with Sam going back and forth, fighting each other, because Sam, of course, is the good guy, and this version of Al is the bad guy, mainly because, too, they hypothesize that the reason Sam is leaping around trying to put things right when once went wrong is because God is actually leaping him around to, do this stuff. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. Dean Stockwell does a great villain in this episode. I mean, he downright a little creepy and scary in this episode while he's, playing the evil version of Al. When I first saw this episode, I was like, yeah, that's creepy. So you get, the good Al and the bad Al eventually too, and it's like they're like two different people. So Dean Stockwell and his acting abilities, top notch in this episode. And I just enjoy seeing him play, the opposite of the good guy and being the bad guy. It's a great episode. That brings us to number 6 on this list, and that's an episode titled A Little Miracle. And this episode also comes from the 3rd season, and basically this episode is a Christmas episode, and it uses themes of A Christmas Carol in this episode, where Sam leaps into the butler of this rich guy, who, forgets his past. He's rich. He doesn't care about the little people. He wants to tear down this little Salvation Army mission to make room for this big old tower. And, of course, the Salvation Army lady is trying to get him not to do it. And he's like, I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway. I don't care about these poor people. And so it's up to Sam and Al to Scrooge this guy. And of course, Al plays the part of the ghost of Christmas Future. Now, as I said, only Sam can see and hear Al. However, there have been some exceptions throughout the series, as in small children, dogs, cats, animals can see him, and sometimes crazy people can see him. And in the case in this episode, this rich billionaire guy happens to be able to see Al because his brain waves are kind of almost on the same wavelength as Sam's. So he was able to see Al. So, of course, towards the end of the episode, where Al basically plays the part of the ghost of Christmas Future, he's dressed up in all these weird looking clothes, got this weird makeup on and everything. And he plays that part to a T, with the comedy there and the way that he tries to frighten this guy and everything. Every time I see this episode, I end up laughing so hard, because just the way Dean Stockwell, does his comedy bit on this and his spin on the whole Christmas Carol thing, and you gotta love that. All right, we're at the halfway mark, and number 5 on this list is an episode called Killin' Time from the 5th season. Now, in this episode, Sam leaps into a serial killer who is holding a mother and her daughter hostage. And, of course, like I said, when Sam leaps into somebody, that person leaps out and is now in the future. And of course, this episode is kind of a unique episode because we really don't get to see Al too much as the hologram, for Sam, because in the future, the serial killer manages to escape. He gets a hold of a gun. He holds Al hostage. He goes, steals one of the other character named Gushy, steals his car and goes out. And of course, it's up to Al. He has to go and get this guy back to the waiting room because Sam can't leap until this guy's back in the waiting room. So he has to, or Sam rather, has to kind of keep himself alive and keep from the cops from coming and storming the house and killing him, because in the original history, that's what happened. So, and of course, he tells the hostages who he really is, and everything. And it's a really nice episode there, but the best part of this episode is Al. Of course, Dean Stockwell is Al. I think that's one of his best characters he ever played. But anyway, he has to go out and he has to hunt this guy down. So you get some good scenes of him out and about trying to track this guy down and confronting him at some lady's place that he picked up, on the street, that he was apparently going to end up killing eventually. But Al intervenes and everything and tries to talk him down, tries to get him to listen to him, to go back to the project and back to the waiting room. And of course, right before it goes to a commercial, this guy takes the gun, aims it at Al, and just shoots him. Like, several times shoots him. And of course, the first time I'm watching this episode, I'm like, what? They're gonna kill him off? They're gonna shoot Al? What's going on? But of course, you know, Al, always prepared. He's wearing a bulletproof vest. But he manages to track him down again, and he manages to knock him out by shooting him in the neck with a dart. And so that's how he gets him back into the waiting room and everything. But it's a great episode, seeing Al kind of leave the confines of the project and Quantum Leap and, you know, being more out there, you know, doing some heroic stuff that Sam usually does. So it's good to see him in that role, you know, of, you know, tracking the killer down and doing his stuff. You know, another great Dean Stockwell episode. Number 4 on this list is an episode called Jimmy, and this is back from the 2nd season. In this episode, Sam leaps into a guy who has some intellectual disabilities, and it's been noted as one of the best episodes of Quantum Leap, and it's one of my favorites as well. As you can tell, it's on this list, not just because it's a good episode, but because it's got some good Al moments in this episode. And in this episode, we kind of learned that Al used to have a sister named Trudy who also had some intellectual disabilities, but because Al and his sister were orphans and they're in the orphanage and stuff, and Al would, you know, sometimes sneak out and stuff, but one of the times while he was out sneaking around, and then he comes back, he finds out that his sister ended up getting pneumonia, and she ends up dying, and she died at a really young age, and of course this affects Al in this episode. And because Sam is living the life in this episode, you know, of someone else who has intellectual disabilities, and seeing the struggles that he's having trying to get accepted into the world, because back in them days, if you had, you know, any kind of intellectual disability or, you know, anything like that, like, you know, cerebral palsy or, you know, even epilepsy, you were put in an institution. And this episode was about keeping this guy, Jimmy, from going back into an institution and being accepted by his fellow family members and peers and stuff. It's a great episode with Al, and Dean Stockwell, as always, delivers a great performance, especially when he's talking about his sister. Number 3 on this list is an episode called SHAK Theater, and this is from the 3rd season. This is actually the 3rd season finale, actually. In this episode, Sam leaps into an insane asylum, and he ends up, you know, getting electric shock treatment. And of course, this kind of erases his personality, and all the personalities of all these previous people he's leapt into start emerging and everything. So Sam really can't, you know, do what he's there to do. So it's up to Al to do it. And of course, like I said earlier, about certain people that can see him, and I said about, you know, people that are crazy, they're in a, you know, an insane asylum, and of course all the people there can see him, and he's, you know, basically helping this one guy named Tibby, I believe. It's been a while since I've seen the episode, but I'm pretty sure his name's Tibby. Basically to help him get out and get a job and make a life for himself. And of course, this is a big Dean Stockwell episode where he really gets a chance to shine in this episode. And the way that he helps Tibby is basically he just needs to kind of teach Tibby how to read and everything. And of course, Tibby tells Al that he's never been really able to learn his ABCs. So Al kind of devised this way that how can I, get him to learn the ABCs? So he comes up with this thing called the alphabet rap. And so through the supercomputer Ziggy, he plays this, beat, and he starts rapping the ABCs and, making up a song about it and everything. And of course, everybody gets involved. Al's there, dancing around, singing around, and, having fun, and everybody else is having fun. And it's a great moment, seeing Dean Stockwell, hearing him sing and seeing him doing some dancing and really getting a chance to shine again in this episode, which, of course, is always great to see. And of course, this episode ends where the next episode in our countdown picks up, because it's kind of like a cliffhanger at the end of the season that picks up at the beginning of the next season. So let's get into the next one here. At number 2, we have an episode called The Leap Back, and this is the beginning of the 4th season. This episode I have on this list for one reason, and that's the fact that this is mainly an Al episode. So we get Dean Stockwell more than ever in this episode, because at the end of the previous episode, Shark Theater, the way that they get Sam back to having his own personality and everything is he has to do another electric shock treatment. And of course, right at the end of the episode, right before he leaps out, they give him the shock treatment, and as soon as they do that, he starts leaping. Then they both end up getting struck by lightning, because this was happening during a lightning storm. And somehow, both Sam and Al leap at the same time. And during the course of all this thing, Al and Sam switch places, where now Al is the leaper and Sam is the hologram. So it's fun to see Al going about trying to figure out all this stuff that he needs to do, being a leaper instead of the observer and the hologram. Got a lot of good moments in there. Of course, Sam gets to leap home finally. For this episode, you get to find out that he's got a wife and, a life back there and everything. But of course, you get to see Al, basically beating somebody up who's, basically egging him on about some stuff. And it's just so great to see him do something other than being the hologram, kind of like in the vein of the Killing Time episode. But like I said, this time now he's back in time as the leaper. And it's one of my favorite episodes. I can put this episode in anytime and always enjoy it. I've seen it probably about 1,000 times, if not more. So it is a great episode, especially for Dean Stockwell. Of course, by the end of the episode, it has to be where Sam has to go back and leap back into to Al and the person that Al replaced, so that Al doesn't die in this episode and everything. So of course Al then goes back to the future and back to being Sam's hologram and everything. But it's just a great episode. I highly recommend this one. Which brings us to number 1 on this list. And that episode is called MIA. And this is the 2nd season finale. And in my opinion, I think is one of the greatest episodes of Quantum Leap at all time. Especially for Dean Stockwell and the character of Al. In this episode, we actually get to meet Al's first wife, Beth, because Sam leaps back into this police officer who then ends up running into Beth. And of course, Al doesn't really tell Sam that that's who she is and everything, but kind of ignoring what Sam's really there to do, but basically trying to get Sam to get Beth to believe that Al is still alive, because of course he is. He's just being a POW at this time, but she doesn't know that. So he's basically trying to get Sam to get Beth to believe that he's still alive so that she doesn't, remarry and everything. And of course, in this episode, he's a little ragged. He's very concerned. You really get to see some real depth into the character of Al. And of course, you can get that only with Dean Stockwell. Like I said, great actor, many, many years in the business. And this episode, it just breaks your heart. It really does. Especially at the end where Al is given an opportunity to kind of say goodbye to Beth at the end of the episode, where he goes into her house and she puts on their song. And of course, she's, dancing by herself to the song. And of course, Al goes in and he dances with her, but of course, not really dancing because he's technically a hologram. She can't see him, but he goes through the motions with her, dances, and you get to see him say goodbye to her and, talk about different things. It's a great sequence. It's a great, touching end to the episode, the end of that season, and it shows you, the true range of Dean Stockwell as an actor. And in my opinion, the best episode of all time that involves Dean Stockwell and the character of Al. So there you have it. There's my top 10 episodes of Quantum Leap that deal specifically with Dean Stockwell's character of Al in the series. I hope you enjoyed this little countdown, and if this episode of TV Talk, is successful, maybe I'll do some more top 10s. Who knows? Let me know if you want me to do more, if you like this kind of thing, because if you do, I got some things in mind for some more top 10s. So, but anyhow, that's going to about do it for this one. Like I said, Quantum Leap, I don't know if you've seen it, haven't seen it, heard about it, whatever. But if you have not seen it, I highly recommend that you check it out. You can buy it on DVD and Blu-ray on Amazon. Sometimes you'll see it in the stores. And I know right now, the only place that it's streaming is on the NBC app. Not Peacock, but just the NBC app. You can stream it there. And of course, it's got commercials in there, unfortunately. But that's a place to see it if you have not seen it and you want to check it out. But, as always, that's going to about do it for this video. So, if you like this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, hit that notification bell so you get notified of future videos. And, of course, if you want to support this dumb little stupid channel of mine, don't forget to check out the Patreon link. That's down below. And, of course, if you want to follow me on all the major social medias, check out all those links. Those are all down below. Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, all those. You can check me out on there. And if you're interested in some merch, I got merch for you. Check out the merch store link. That's also down below. Who knows? You might find something that you like. And if you have not done this yet, check out my podcast. It's called Idiots Are Us, The Story of Me. And that, you can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, which is where I do the podcast from. So if you have not checked out my podcast, go give that a look. You might just like that too. It's basically stories of my life, growing up and different things that are going on. And of course, if you want to check out my wife's social media links, all that stuff's down below. You can go check her out as well. But with that, I hope you're having a good day, good night, good week, good month, whatever the case may be. I know Thanksgiving is coming soon. And so I hope you're all doing good. I hope you're all safe. And of course, rest in peace to the great Dean Stockwell. But I will see you all in the next video. Bye for now.